feet, and so on and so forth, right? In the same way, too, consciousness is measurable, it's finite because it's manifested. It's a sort of container, it's a sort of apparatus through which uh, awareness knows its limited aspect. But then
Oh,
awareness itself, you cannot measure.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
But whatever you can say about awareness, you say, awareness is very big, it's very vast. Well, the idea of big, the perception of vast occur in awareness. Awareness itself has no attribute. Whatever attribute you could say about awareness, whatever feature you could say about awareness, you could always say that it's actually content of awareness, right?
Yeah. So
Mm.
can I say if the Arahant die, I mean there's no I mean the he's abiding awareness, right? So for the normal people, so they kind of cling to something, right? So that's why there's awareness manifest something or because they're clinging something, right? For the
Okay,
normal
so
people.
as long as clinging remains, then it is meaningful to say that, there's someone who abides in something, right? So for as long as there's a clinging that happens here to the five aggregates, you can say, you see, this person right here um, clings to the five aggregates or abides by the five aggregates, right? But then when there is no clinging, then who is the person who does the abiding? What is the object that the person is abiding on? You cannot really say. Okay, it's a clinging activity that reifies the subject, reifies the object. And go, here is a person. When you really look at it, when you say the arahat who passed away, who is that arahat? Where is the arahat? Well, there's a fleeting thought, and to the extent that that thought may be clinging to an identity, and go, I am this person who's attained arahathood, then you say, there's a thought with its object, right? But then if there's no more clinging activity, then you see that thought is just thought. There's no person.
Oh, oh,
Right?
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I see.
Mhm.
There's no person, so what I say, Arhat, when Arhat die, I mean, it means like when somebody is like enlightened, right, and he's not clinging to anything. So it's only he abides in the awareness for the normal people, ordinary people, because they are clinging something. So,
Yeah, so
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 the,
it's for the sake of the unawakened ordinary worldlings that we say, you see that arahat, he is no longer abiding anywhere, right? It's
right,
a concession that we make to uh the bunch of thoughts that are still clinging to the notion that there's this individual, there are these individuals, right? And they're defined in the following way, right? They are located where the body is at. It's for the sake of the thoughts that such explanation is offered. But otherwise, where is that arahat? But
oh,
but
oh, right,
when you say the arahat abides in awareness, it sounded like you're implying that there is this individual who is distinct and separate from awareness and is abiding in awareness, right? He chooses to stay with awareness. And if he so chooses, he could leave behind awareness or become separate from awareness, which in reality is not possible,
right, right. Oh,
right?
I
Yeah.
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah. So
yeah.
from a if you stand outside the perspective of deluded clinging thought, really there's no one who is abiding anywhere,
Right.
right? But for as long as there are ideas about locations and individuals and objects that could potentially be seized upon, and those ideas are tinted by ignorance, meaning that there's emotion invested in those ideas. There's this impulse, like, this is real. This is a position I want to take up. Right? These thoughts, these ideas, these activities suggest that I am here. That this contracting tendency is justified. This grasping tendency is justified. Then it feels like there's an individual.
Right. Right. Uh, but when we talk about the dependent origination, so we talk about the cleaning. So I just wondering what is cleaning? Who
Hey, um, one of the things you may notice about dependent origination scheme is that there are no agency implied. There's no person involved. There are only activities that are described, right?
right,
So clinging is an activity, craving is an activity, becoming is an activity, right?
right,
Contacting is an activity, okay? Or sankhara is activity, and so on and so forth. Okay?
yeah,
And ignorance too is an activity. Ignorance is the staying inside, the becoming immersed in a deluded way of regarding, right? So all those are activities, and then there's no notion of agency that is implied in that scheme. You don't go, oh, I or this person does that, causes that, but rather there are just these activities.
okay.
Mhm.
So when we say you observe the contact, right? The contact and then true, sure. Feeling,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
When you look at your own experience, you could definitely say that, there is clinging happening, right? But then if you were to say, well, there's someone who is behind that clinging, who's choosing to do that clinging, then you'd be
Selfie.
hard put to find that someone.
Oh,
You
yeah.
might be able to identify further causal forces behind that clinging. First there's this impulse before clinging happens. Or first there's this perception before clinging happens. First there's this instance of inappropriate attention before clinging happens. You might be able to identify a whole bunch of causal forces or uh, preceding activities prior to the fact of clinging. But then at no stage of your investigation would you be able to find a person and go, this is the person who's responsible for all those activities. You see, this is actually not a sort of ontological philosophy. All the experiences they arise on their own. And it's only certain ideas that go, those activities are mine. Those activities come from me. Those activities are generated by me. You see, and such regarding happens retroactively, meaning that it happens after the fact of those activities. You can observe this in action. Not only can you verify this in your experience, but that this is such a liberating thing for you. You welcome this reality. It's so good to not to have to appropriate anything. It's so good to not to have to be this owner, be the steward, you see. It's not that it's not that what I just described is philosophically true, but it's soteriologically welcoming. It's such a liberating fact. You're so happy to relinquish ownership. You see, subjectively, it feels like you're too lazy to claim anything as your own because there's disenchantment, there's wariness with with regards to sankhara. So your mind is disinclined to perform the necessary activity to stake a claim on any phenomena. It's
Doc,
actually a natural way of living. Yeah, you will see that it requires a lot of straining to maintain an identity of ownership, doership, and so forth. It's so good, it's so liberating to, like not to have any sense of ownership in your experience, not to have any sense of doership in your experience.
Dr. Chu, so if I want to describe this kind of, uh, the process when I watch the contact and the feeling and the cleaning, can I say I noticed the cleaning or I noticed,
Well, then look closely at the I that you posit to be the subject of noticing. Look closely at that. What is it? Chances are you'll see that it's a thought. There's a thought that goes, I notice that there is cleaning, right? And then
right,
immediately afterwards, the thought disappears. And then you go, well, previously I've noticed something, and that information is stored somewhere. That information must be stored in me. But then when you look closely at, once again, this me that you posit in the series of action, you realize it's another thought. It's another thought that goes, oh, I've inherited some new information. I am this person who's acquired this new piece of information, and I'm a wiser person as a result. It's another thought. In the end, thinking is not about you talking to yourself. That'd be very weird. You tell yourself that, hey, oh, I noticed something. What would you need to talk to yourself, right? In the end, it's really thoughts talking to thoughts. In the end, thinking is a way certain means, certain information gets passed down. It's almost like the built-in mission of each individual thought is to pass along its influence so that future thoughts will be under its sway, you see? So right now you go, oh, like Buddha Dharma is so good. I got to retain this information, right? What are you doing? Well, what is this particular thought doing? In a sense, the thought is trying to exert its influence on future thought to make sure that this influence gets passed down. And this influence is only passed down if many future thoughts perpetuate the same information. It passes along the same information. In reality, information is not the same. You remember the analogy that I would give about the game of passing down, some sentence? This game that you play as a little kid, we whisper some random sentence to the guy next to us, and the guy would whisper supposedly the same line of sentence to the guy next to him, and so on and so forth. And after a dozen people or so, we would have the last person who received the message to announce to the whole group what he or she heard, right? It may very well be that, what the guy announced is drastically different than the sentence that the first person imparted to the second person, you see. So the transmission of information gets degraded over time. That's the nature of thought too. You want this me to get passed down. You want this frame, this feeling of agency, this sense of subjectivity to be passed down, right? But really, only a semblance of it gets passed down. This is why if you go distant enough, the future you will not recognize the present you. The present you doesn't recognize the future you. You know, when you look at, I don't know, like in a hypothetical scenario where you look at your future you go, yeah, that's the sort of person you become. That's the kind of food you love. Now you're reborn as a, I don't know, a Chinese and you eat dogs. That's disgusting. I'm sorry to put down Chinese like that, right? Or the future you as a Chinese will look back at this present American you and go, ugh, you guys eat hamburgers? That's disgusting. You know what kind of stuff they put in hamburgers? Like you guys are barbarians. You guys don't eat Chinese food. You don't use chopsticks. You see, so when you look at the so-called personality, it's not a stable subject at all. It's just a moment's worth of impulse that is swayed by some thought. What is thought other than a swaying effect of the mind's movement? You see, every thought thinks that this is me. I am me, you see. And then your question was about consciousness. What is consciousness? Consciousness is just a bundle of thoughts. And these thoughts, they are related to each other, revolving around some theme. So if you're human, right, if there is a human consciousness involved, then the recurring theme will be human related. If it's a women consciousness we're talking about, then the recurring thought would be revolving around women. If it's God consciousness we're talking about, then it'll be, I don't know, some celestial matters, right? Look at your mind in such a way. And this is not, some abstract philosophical position to take up. You could really examine this. The person that you think is the me who does the noticing. Oh, I'm learning something. Here, I'm meditating. I'm observing clinging as it happens. I'm learning something. I'm gaining this insight. Does awareness really become wiser as a result of noticing something? No.
No, no.
It's a thought that thinks that it's become wiser, right? Its perspective is slightly changed or drastically shifted. And you go, oh, I'm wiser. Now I'm a wiser person as a result of having gained this information.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
When you look at the nature of thought enough, you'll see that why is it that thoughts are so seductive, so entrancing, meaning that it has a tendency to captivate attention, right? To suck in the attention so that there's a sense of participation. There's a sense of you uh, being sucked into a train of thought, right? You become lost in some drama, some narrative. That's the way thoughts are designed. It's designed to influence. It's designed to impart influence. Otherwise, thoughts cannot perpetuate itself. Thoughts tend to generate new thoughts. This idea in Buddhism is called papancha, right? Mental proliferation, right? What is mental proliferation? It's this tendency that a single thought begets more thoughts, right? When you're entranced by a single thought, what happens? Then you give energy to the mind to produce even more thoughts, right? You give energy to what may start out as a simple thought to a really complex, well proliferated storyline. That's why it's called papancha, mental proliferation. Consciousness is following the tendency of papancha. This is why consciousness what? Tends toward complexity. If given the opportunity, right? If you live long enough as an individual, your consciousness tends towards complexity. Or when we're infant, the infant consciousness compared to adult consciousness is way more simple. And then consciousness tends to complexity also as a species. Human species, for example, if it survives long enough, it tends towards complexity. Right nowadays, we're able to what? To use our internet technology to greatly facilitate the exchange of information. And that in turn would synergistically create even more complex emergent property. Right. And nowadays we're able to create, some semblance of AI, which in some at least in some instances can even pass Turing tests to give the appearance of, like something in possession of consciousness. That's the nature of consciousness, tending towards complexity. Awareness doesn't do that. Awareness has no tendency. It doesn't proliferate.
Dr. Chu. So
Yeah.
because it's hard for some for like a teaching saying, oh, to be aware, abide with awareness, because awareness is not a thing or something where
Yeah.
person can abide to.
Yeah.
So there are teachings where some teacher teach
Yeah.
to purify or to transform that consciousness instead of.
Yeah.
And I, one point, someone asked me this question saying, you have to know your destination after this life, where would you want to be? And so to point your, your consciousness toward that. So I was thinking,
Yeah.
if I'm just
That's not the
trying to,
liberative path, right? The the,
right,
the liberat the liberative path is not about, finding your destiny and then, allowing your
right.
consciousness to evolve, but rather the liberative path is about developing disenchantment towards the nature of consciousness. You see that the
Right.
tendency on the part of consciousness to evolve, and then you ask questions like, well, where is it evolving to? And is evolution necessarily always leading to betterment, to improvement? No.
So,
Evolution is largely incidental. It's determined by environmental factors, right? It has no regard to the well-being of the individual or the species, right? What gets passed down are simply genes that or memes or self-perpetuating mechanisms that are the fittest in a given environment. It's not necessarily the genes that will make the individual happiest, right? Or the most free from suffering, right? And as far
so,
as we could tell, species are not evolving towards some cosmic or discernible purposes. We're not evolving so that what we become more spiritual. That's not necessarily the case at all. We're not
well,
evolving towards omniscience, right? Perfect knowledge, or omnipotence, or eternal life, or perfect happiness. We're not evolving in that direction, not as far as we could tell, right? So for that reason, the liberative path is not about finding out the final culmination of consciousness destiny, but rather is about this developing disenchantment towards consciousness. Yeah.
so I was just thinking, yeah, just cultivate or practice on that satipatthana
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
let the way it be, whatever comes,
Good, good,
comes,
good.
and just
Exactly.
abiding into that practice.
Right,
Just
right.
at any time, any moment. And because the worriness, the worry, the thinking of where to be is already a bad sankhara, is a sankhara. So
Exactly,
it's
right. That's a very, very good question. So let me rephrase that a little bit so the other people may understand. Uh, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that, well, how do we abide in awareness? If awareness is this elusive thing, right? Technically without attributes, without properties, how do we abide? Well, a really great way to train yourself to abide in awareness in an incremental way, in a gradual way, is by practicing satipatthana, right? And satipatthana is largely about cultivating seclusion. What is seclusion? Seclusion is about extricating your attention from the content of awareness. Right? If you're not lost in the content of awareness, or at least you're not that lost in the content of awareness, then what happens? You become more aware. Okay. So this may involve your secluding yourself from worry, right? Secluding yourself from proliferating sensual thought, right? This may involve your reining in distractive thoughts, right? And then you just focus on, say, physical sensations, abiding in physical ease, right? This may involve your focusing on a satipatthana theme, such as what, letting go and things like that. What you are effectively doing with any one of the so-called 16 steps of anapanasati program is that you're cultivating seclusion. And cultivating seclusion is really ultimately about abiding awareness. Yeah. Initially, your abiding in awareness may be feigned. It requires a lot of intention, requires fabrication on your part. You go, okay, here I am. I'm going to make sure that my attention doesn't wander away. That it stays within body, right? It stays within this particular purview and so forth. Initially, it is feigned. It is not natural awareness. But over time, as you become better at this, you will be able to notice the intention that is behind those intentional activities, and they gradually dissolve. They gradually melt away, and you're able to abide naturally in awareness. And in the end, it feels like you're not a separate individual who is trying to abide in awareness. You are awareness. In fact, you don't even have to say that you are awareness. You don't even have to, give rise to this notion, I am awareness. You're treating I as another object of your attention, treating awareness as an object of your attention, and then trying to, force some kind of connection between the two. You don't have to do that anymore. And once you reach that state, it just feels, everything feels harmonious to you. There's no separate individual that stands out. In other words, conceit is completely eradicated. You don't buy into any standout thoughts that goes, no, I'm here, here is my relationship with the rest of the world, with I.e. awareness. You no longer buy into that. And there's perfect rest. To abide in awareness until I reach perfect rest is one where the relationship between the two is dissolved.
And I see it's not hard to practice that, the satipatthana, because we can feel if we're making progress. We know.
Yeah.
We know, like it's peaceful. Like
Yep.
before, it's hard to bring peace to certain situation, but now, like in any situation, we can bring back
Yep.
the peace feeling, the at ease. Then seeing that the improvement, I think.
Yep. And this is why the Buddha described his own program as a pleasant abiding here and now, right? What is so special about what he teaches? When you compare the Buddha's teaching with his contemporary teachers' teachings, oftentimes you walk away with the impression that there are so many similarities, right? But then there is a meaningful difference, if you will. There is a meaningful way to distinguish Buddha Dharma from the rest, and that is the Buddha really greatly emphasizes jhana. What is jhana? Jhana is the ability to enjoy renunciation pleasure, awakening pleasure, peace pleasure, letting go pleasure, right? Seclusion pleasure, equanimity pleasure, and so forth. He greatly emphasizes, he's basically saying that the way for you to abide in awareness and then to do so naturally, it's done by your learning to enjoy the right kind of pleasure. What is the right kind of pleasure? It's related to peace. It's related to letting go. Yeah.
I was like searching so many different way
Yeah.
of practice and different methods. But then I felt like I'm feeling like I was searching every, like in the tree, there's many branches. So after I satisfied with these branches, I'm looking for another branches. another branch.
Mm.
But now is if I find out the, know how to practice from the root, the stem,
Exactly.
then
Once
no
you
need
start
to go
practicing
from,
at the right, once you start practicing at the level of the root,
yes.
and there's a shift in the mind where you begin to be willing to let go of information, let go of views. Before you were like always, well, is this the truth? Am I
Right.
following the right religion? Am I following on the right path? Right? You're doing that because you're still at the level of the branches. But once you're at the level of the root, then you're like,
Yeah.
I don't need to add anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to acquire new information. Right? You recognize what is natural. You recognize what is the returning to, what is the unborn, for example. Right? Things become so simple.
So
You
much.
become free from debates. You become free from contestation. There are all these squabbles going on, people debating with each other, on the internet, what is the right interpretation, so forth. You have very little interest in that. Why do you have very little interest in that? Because you're so well fed by inner peace. So you know this is right. It's so simple. It's so direct. It's so effective. You're not getting any sense of lack. One of the big reasons that people get into debate, people get into squabbles, is because there's still insecurity in their mind. This is why they have something to prove. This is why they have a personal stake in the position they've taken up. They need to prove its truth, right? In other words, the present thought need to convince the future thought, I am right. You had better inherit my influence, right? And a meditator who's on the liberative path, she is beyond thoughts, beyond the influence of thought. So she is no longer interested in all those positions, all those views. She is just perfectly stabilized, resting in peace.
So before I was so scared of doing anything, like
Yep.
thinking good or bad. But now I
Yep.
said, just do because I have to do something. It's
Yep.
it's it's, it's just doing something. Even if I do something like Sam as before, like gardening, before I was so scared. I wouldn't do it because I say, everything is karma, karma.
Karma.
And
My
then
brother used to run to me and cry and go, "Oh, good, your brother, I accidentally stepped over a sutra. I'm going to burn in hell for 30 aeons." He was crying his heart out, like because all these religious ideas are drilled into us.
mhm,
Oh, when I was burning the incense, I accidentally blow the flame out using my mouth, as opposed to doing it the right way, like this, right? Extinguishing the fire by using your hand. And according to some quote unquote sutras, this is a karmic cause for rebirth in the hellish realm. People get scared all the time. Like once you understand the nature of awareness, then you are so fluid in your perception. On the one hand, you could see how special the teaching is. This is a unique teaching. This is the only path. On the other hand, you are welcoming to all different sorts of views.
mhm.
You look at all religions, you look at people's different ways of practice, and you
Mhm.
have respect for
Yes.
them. You have a like appreciative joy. You could
Mhm.
see that there is some truth in what they're doing. Right? So your mind could be simultaneously self-assured and also be universally accepting, right? Ecumenical at the same time. And it's a wonderful feeling. When I was younger, right? I was studying really hard. I was immersed in sutra study. And I thought, oh, with this lifelong cultivation of knowledge, I'm finally like a worthy to be an inheritor of the Buddha's teaching, and I'm on a mission, right? I feel this fiery zeal. Okay, I'm out there. I needed to propagate this. I need to make sure that people receive the right view. I want to see to that the wrong views are vanquished from the world, right? And then without realizing that the real right view in Buddhism comes from peace. It doesn't come from knowledge. It doesn't come from a sense of mission. And then you become it's such a you start living a quality life. You're not in conflict with anything. The mind is wide open. It's
Yeah.
there's no thought being produced that would insist that it is right. There's no thought that would be produced that would go, I am something, something,
Thought,
right? It's so
thought
good,
produce,
right? Whenever
thought,
you are something, then you're in conflict with something else.
thoughts produce when I need to help someone, then think about it. If not, then just don't have to think about it. If need to
Oh,
do
just
something to
keep
help someone,
practicing.
then
Just keep practicing. Don't buy into the thought that, oh, it's hard to do when I'm in this situation. Look at that thought as just another thought. That thought is trying to impart an influence on
but yeah,
future thought.
when
That
you
that
have
thought
to
is trying
plan,
to influence a future thought in the direction of believing
but when
that,
you have
oh,
to
practice
plan
is really
something,
difficult, right? Don't even buy into that.
but when you plan to do something, you have to put some thoughts in, right? You have to like plan something
You
ahead.
know, you know, you, even that can be done spontaneously. Even in the seeming process of your deliberating on something, you're trying to, like think through something. It could feel spontaneous to you. That there need not be, any sense of agency that gets reified. Like it's, oh, I'm the thinker, I'm bearing all the responsibility. Let me make sure that I'm not wrong. There's all this neuroticism, there's all this fear, insecurity that goes into the process. Mhm.
Last on Sunday, last Sunday, I chant, normally I lead the chanting section on Sundays. And I forgot about that, that compassion sutra. Well, normally we chant that compassion sutra and
You
heart
mean
sutra. Every
Metta Sutta? Metta Sutta?
the no the one that from is it's mantra. It's not a word that we
Oh,
can
okay. You're
understand.
talking about the Chinese Apocryphon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that one.
yeah,
And my mind went blank. And
yeah,
that we chant day after day. And my
yeah,
mind, I just couldn't recall. And I say, well, at that time I say, well, when I do something like this, I have to put some thoughts in. I have to
yeah,
recall. Otherwise,
yeah,
if I don't recall it, then it's not there.
yeah. One of the reasons that stream entry comes with the dropping of attachment to taboo and rights is because your mind would intuitively know what is ineffectual. It will just look upon certain religious practices as too tiring, and you will not be able to see its point. You see,
Yeah.
you see how easy, how straightforward real practice is. And so if people start telling you, oh, no, 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 you need to first wipe clean your karmic slate by prostrating 10,000 times, right? Or you need to, first get this kasana correct. So this uh, color disc in your mind becomes perfectly clear to you, right? And then you, you feel it's just it's a very tiring practice. You're just wary about these needless suffering.
Yeah. So before I was really worried a lot about that, but now I'm saying no. I just read from the text. Just bring the text, and I'm not worried about. Before we have to memorize it, and sometimes I chant an hour or more. A lot like not reading from the text and have to memorize more than an hour of sutra,
Yep.
the mantra and thing like that. But now I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Just read from the book, from the text.
I have a friend, who is just like mortally fearful of the prospect of further rebirth. And he is so apprehensive about the prospect of being reborn without the ability to recall the Buddha Dharma that he had learned in this life, right? So what this person ends up doing is he tried to memorize as many sutta passages as he could. This is a sort of insurance policy for him. Like by really committing these sutta passages to rote, he could hopefully in the future be able to spontaneously remember the Buddha's messages. Right. And I look at such a person, I just smile. Like, like yeah. Really, in the end, the practice is about forgetting. It's not about picking up new ideas.
But like I said earlier, because we're trying to practice different methods, and when we feel something is not right, then we jump to another one, but
Yep.
like a lot of them are having some kind of problem that
Yep. Yep. Many of us fellow truth seekers, we spend the bulk of our lifetime in earnest search for what works for us, right? We've gone through a lot, if I may say so, right? We've gone through a lot of suffering in the form of studying and going to retreats and even to the point of torturing our body and mind. And this is why we are doubly appreciative of the Dharma that we've learned, right?
but we need to understand each of them have the purpose, but we need to know the purpose. So like the novice, when we first come into the monastery, we need to learn, because so that way we can focus, just not to think about worldly life outside, something like that. So there's time we dedicated to just learning.
Many religious activities can be bypassed altogether. They don't necessarily all serve a useful purpose, as far as I can see. I don't believe that, people have to go through all the things that we've gone through in order to, to arrive at something that's liberating.
But now is the
Yeah.
system. That's a system in our tradition. That's the system
Yeah,
that
no,
we have
no,
to
but
follow
given
that.
the choice, we should definitely show people a more straightforward path. It's definitely not the case that first you needed to have failed miserably, in all these divergent paths before you're shown the direct path. No, I don't think that's necessary at all. Yeah, that may be our own case, like, but there are people, I've come
So
across people who could just be taught with a direct method and they go straight into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why I felt like I'm so lucky to know about the satipatthana that you've been teaching, and that helped me a lot. And remember the sutra that about the sutra, I don't know the name, but that one, and the the one that we chant every day in the morning in the temple, talking about the
Shrangama,
mind, the sixth place of the mind, seventh place of the mind.
seven
Yeah,
places.
seven places of the mind.
Shramgama,
And
Shramgama Sutra,
and
heroic march.
at the end is have long
It
mantra.
has a very long dharani
Yeah.
called the
So
Shramgama dharani.
every single one of us, when we join the monastery, they make sure that we can
Yep,
memorize it. So they test us.
it's
So
such a
I
tough
have to
task.
test to memorize, and it's long. It's like an hour
Yeah, it's
chant,
an hour
an hour
long
chant, and we have
recitation.
to
You have to commit
memorize
to
it.
memory. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I had to learn it before. I had to pass that before I can become a nun.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But yeah. So I said, but I mean, it's have some purpose. Like I have to focus, concentrate.
No, once again, not all those things are necessary, really. There's so many other things in life that could train you in focus. Yeah, so
Wow. But thank you very much for everything. And good luck to you. Have a safe trip.
thank you very much. Take care. Hey, hello, Jared. I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you're saying. Sorry, you're gonna. Mhm. Okay, right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, in pre-modern context, this means that you want to, like in the duration of your upholding those eight precepts, you want to live a restrained lifestyle where you're not just, say, for example, sleeping in an abandoned way. Like you're so enamored with the comfort of being able to sleep to your heart's content that there is no alertness in you. You see, um, it's like let me give you a concrete example. We eat for different reasons, and some people they eat because they enjoy the festive atmosphere that's sometimes associated with eating. Right? You want to go to a restaurant that has very nice ambiance, and it makes you feel like you're a high status person. You could gorge, right? You eat as a way to de-stress, right? Um, so it's about indulgence. Yeah. In modern context, one possible way you can go about is just to stay alert so that you're not intoxicated by the requisites. Whether it's a bed you use, whether it's a food you use, whether it's a clothes you wear, like when wearing clothes, you don't harbor thoughts about, oh, I wear this so to show off to people the kind of income I have, right? Or to augment a certain masculine feature about me, right? With the intention to capture the attention of the opposite sex or the same sex, for the matter. Yeah. But use the requisite with a restrained mindset. That's really what the precept is about. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I really believe so. Yeah. And the reason that for a lot of people, it may sound like a undelivered promise or unfulfilled promise is because they're not doing it right. They're missing key pieces of information. They're not doing it in this like non-distracted, one-pointed way. And therefore they're frequently beset or distracted by the hindrances. But if you're someone who already um, is endowed with a proper renunciant mindset, meaning that you already have like a strong disenchantment towards sankhara, towards samsara, right? And that you delight in the prospect of letting go, of inner peace, and so forth, and you're given the right kind of information. Really, it's a realistic time frame to fulfill the curriculum, so to speak. 7 years, that's a reasonable estimate. This is a time when in that 7 year, you're enjoying the lifestyle of a renunciant. You're made serene, you're made at ease, you're made contented, you're made inspired, in almost like an uninterrupted way. Your life is just like lubricated, sustained, lubricated by all these good spiritual food. And you stay diligent, you stay alert about the task at hand. Yeah, you could really see how you're improving almost like on day-to-day basis. There are these suttas that corroborate the Satipatthana Sutta by saying how if you practice correctly in the daytime, you'll see progress in the evening. If you practice correctly in the evening, you'll see progress in the morning. And so you would really feel that. Subjectively, it feels like the tightness is weakened, the grasping is weakened. This dogmatic attitude of absolutely needing something, that's like it gets eroded. You feel lighter, greater and greater ease, greater willingness to let go. Whatever attachment, instances of attachment you're able to detect in your being. You're just opened up. You're not contracted, and it feels good. You're at peace, enjoying peace. You're appreciating peace. You're encouraging yourself to stay close to that peace and just keep reaping the reward. And by the way, this is of course the ideal situation, right? So if it's not panning out it's not unfolding in that way for you, don't get frustrated, because frustration or self-doubt and so forth will just make the process more difficult. It will just make you deviate even more from the renunciant jhanic mindset that we're talking about, where you're contented, where you're like constantly steering away from the hindrances. You're patient, you know, and your confidence is boosted because you're constantly seeing that your attachment is weakened. Yeah, yeah. It's primarily about um, not using meditation technique in a mechanical, deadpan manner, but rather you're looking at how is it that you're practicing. So, um, for example, when you go, okay, I'm going to practice metta, okay, and instead of just practicing away in metta, you go, well, what are the activities are involved that constitutes this mindset called metta? And you see, there are these thoughts that are generated. These images are invoked, right? This practice requires this much exertion on your part. When you're not tired and you have like energy to spare to do metta, right? Versus, when you're tired and you could see how the metta mind state disintegrates. Okay. You examine the allure of the practice, meaning concretely, it could mean things like, how is it conducing to inner peace, to enjoyment of inner peace? And you see its defects, its dangers, its limitation. These are all supposed to be synonyms, by the way. And it could mean, like how is it unable to conduce to inner peace? For example, the way you practice metta may be fabrication. You're trying to be loving. You're trying to be kind. You're trying to be friendly. You're trying to put together an attitude in the mind. So to that extent, this practice is what? Is sankharic. It requires the use of intention, it requires exertion on your part, it requires energy on your part. When you're tired, you just don't feel like doing metta. You see. And the reason that you wanted to detect its limitation or danger is so that you could potentially what? Exit, escape, transmute, sublimate, rise above the practice in question. In this case, it may be that you're practicing metta in a less and less fabricated way. Let me give you another concrete example. Okay, you're practicing equanimity. Equanimity is largely about letting go. Initially, how do you let go? You go, let me remove this and cast it off. Remove the gum that's stuck in my hair, and then I'm gonna tweak it out. I'm gonna use a scissor. And there's a lot of active doing on your part to cast something off, to exclude something from your experience. And over time, letting go becomes more instantaneous. Letting go becomes more direct, more efficient. It requires less straining on your part. Eventually reach a point where you're not trying to change anything at all. The letting go happens right here at the instance of your recognizing a phenomena. Right there. You don't need any subsequent input of intention. You see. So they are origination, dissolution, allure, danger, escape. So these are the five, right? You can look at the first two as a pair. When you look at the origination and the dissolution of a technique, of a sankhara, you're learning lessons such as, how do I put myself in this state? How do I generate this particular activity, right? And then you're looking at what causes this activity to cease. Like for example, if I'm practicing metta, anger will bring it to cessation. Anger would end it. Okay, or my holding a inimical perception in the mind would end the practice, right? Or you could see how metta will just run its natural course. It will end on its own, regardless. For as long as metta remains a fabricated state, it can only stay for a limited duration. It will eventually run out of steam, and then your mind is going to come back to normalcy, quote unquote. Right? So you could look at the first two as a pair. These two is about your learning how to duplicate the technique. Is about how to prevent the disintegration of a mental state. Is about recognizing how every instance of fabrication will end. Right? It's about you're recognizing that however sublime, however subtle the technique you're using, it is a sankhara. It involves a movement of the mind, exertion on your part. So once again, origination, dissolution, or cessation. Okay. The origination here, in Buddhism, the word samudaya, right? Origination, it's different from arising of something. Origination means you're actively producing something through effort. That's called origination. In the same way that dependent origination is you're actively doing something to produce suffering. Okay, dependent origination is not just dependent arising. This is not just, suffering happens. No, you're doing something to make suffering happen. Yeah. So in the same way too, when you're involved in a meditation practice, you look at its origination. In other words, how do you put it together? Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say that I'm practicing the satipatthana method of rendering my body easeful. I look at the process. How do I do that? Right now, I'm trying to relax. Relax. I'm trying to relax. In this process, I'm trying to originate. I'm trying to give rise to the sense of ease. Does that make sense? And I'm also checking at what will interrupt the sense of ease, the solution, right? Cessation. How can I prevent the cessation of ease? And I can also be looking at, well, to the extent that the ease is generated through a fabricated means, it is effortful. It involves sankhara. It's straining, right? Therefore, it's origination. And as the Buddha taught, everything that's originated must what? Must disintegrate. Even with the sublime meditative states. Okay, so that's the first two. The second, the third and the fourth, you could look at them as a pair. Allure and danger, right? Allure is kind of like the benefit, the utility, the usefulness of the technique. Danger is the potential harm, the limitation, the potential downfall, defects of the technique involved. So when you look at metta, what is this potential allure? It dissolves your anger. It makes you feel good. What is its possible danger? It's tiring. After an hour's worth of metta, I go, I've got enough. More metta is going to make me feel cringy. I'm going to feel like I'm just pretending to want to be kind to people. That's a potential downfall of the sankharic state, right? By the way, this is not my invention. The sutta, there is a sutta that says, if I were to spend whole day, whole night immersed in metta-related thought, what harm is there going to be? There's not going to be any harm other than the harm of tiring yourself out. You see, so that's the downfall, that's the danger, that's the limitation aspect. You know the utility, so you can make use of this technique, and that it dovetails to the goal of helping you become established in inner peace, right? And then you also see how it may potentially prevent you from enjoying inner peace. Metta can potentially help with inner peace. Metta can potentially prevent you from enjoying inner peace. Right. And finally, the fifth one, it's a standalone called escape. In the end, all techniques are supposed to be looked upon as sankharas. You're supposed to rise over them. They're just a means to an end. The goal of your spiritual practice is not to get stuck in eternal metta. I know that the five-pronged investigation sounds very complicated. There are five, so many. I have to remember so many prongs, right? But really, it boils down to having this pragmatic attitude of looking at your meditation technique as an activity. So you don't romanticize it, you don't conflate it with something else, you don't become lost in it. You treat dharmic practice as one kind of sankhara. So you could look at it in terms of sankhara's way of being originated and falling away. You are able to look at your meditation practice in a pragmatic lens. How is it going to help me? And the way I'm doing it, how is it preventing me from arriving at natural awareness? And as is the case with all the Buddha's teaching, it's designed to eventually self-implode, right? Meaning that the Dharma is designed so that eventually you don't have to be dependent on the Dharma. It's designed as a raft, right? You have to recognize it as a raft. It's serving its utility, and once the utility is served, then you leave it, at least for the time being, right? First you use sankhara. I'm sorry. First you use vitaka vichara to help you, and once you arrive at inner peace, you go, vitaka vichara, they serve their purpose. Let me withdraw from vitaka vichara so that I will be able to enjoy even greater peace. Right? That's the way the Buddha teaches. First jhana, you use it to arrive at some inner peace. But once you have that level of inner peace, you're in a position to introspect the nature of that inner peace. Hey, is this inner peace what? Unconditioned, unqualified, unmediated? Maybe there are still impurities. Maybe there are still sankharas, like subtle clinging and so forth. So that you could go one step further. You could go into even higher peace. And eventually you arrive at unfeigned peace, which is a synonym for nibbana. For some people, this doesn't necessarily require them to go through all the steps of jhanas, first, second, third, fourth, the formless. It doesn't always entail such a complicated, long-winded journey. For a lot of people, just tweaking the first jhana, it's sufficient for them to realize, they're playing with sankharas, and that there is a peace, there's an inner peace. That's not, a result of you're having performed an activity or you're having to lean on some supporting conditions. Learn to be happy and at peace in a more and more natural way, in a less and less dependent way. How can you make yourself at peace in a more and more simple way? First, you may say, well, I can only be at peace when I'm in a quiet room, not in a noisy place, right? And then eventually you learn, hey, I don't need to be dependent on a quiet environment to be at peace inside, right? First, you go, well, I can only be at peace if I'm happy. Right? Then you learn, hey, even the absence of happiness, you could be at peace. Right? In the beginning, maybe you needed to concentrate in order to be at peace. You need to fix your mind, right? Later on, you go, hey, I don't need to concentrate on anything. The mind can remain, quote unquote, non-directed. I don't need to fix on anything. I don't need to exert the mind to be at peace. That's what I mean by arriving at more and more natural kind of peace. Eventually, you're going to lose your fear because you see that the peace that is in you is not supported by anything. Nothing can rob you of the inner peace. You don't require certain conditions to be able to enjoy peace. Yeah. I'm happy because my wife loves me. What about if she doesn't? And you go, I could still be at peace. Right? You go, I'm happy because I'm healthy. What about if I'm not healthy? Right? And you go, "Hmm." I'm going to be I'm going to be in a second. I could potentially make this sound very complicated when in fact, in actual practice, it really is just about establishing yourself firmly in peace in everyday life. The more you do so, the more you could do it in a straightforward, in an immediate way, in an efficient way, in a natural way. Right? The sutta's specific instruction is about familiarizing yourself with peace, appreciating it, enjoying it, developing it, right? Firmly establish yourself in it, so forth. Just do this. And you increasingly see that, like happiness doesn't have to come from you're owning something, you're having attained something, you're becoming someone, you're holding on to anything. It's a natural and perennial feature of awareness.
Hi, Dr.
Welcome.
Chu.
Yeah.
Dr. Chu, I remember that today one of our my colleague share about his after this is her, I don't know, his second semester. Finally, he put that into practice and see the value of practicing and start doing. Did I get that right? He was like into practice and like start recognizing the right way to practice or somehow. And I said, wow, for 2 semesters, and what's your effort?
Yeah. Well, even upon receiving good teachings, we might not be karmically ripe to implement it right away. You see, it may be that there are still some other worldly preoccupations on our part, or we're distracted by other responsibilities and so forth. So it really takes a convergence of favorable condition, right? A perfect storm, so to speak, for a person to really respond to a dharma and implement it and reap its fruit. Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but I feel happy to know someone, to know someone, at least because some people after semester and after, and then they just, just not retaining the information. But when
Yeah.
someone take it and practice, then I feel happy, just like another person in this life, like
Yeah. In my line of work, I'm extremely blessed in being able to witness, like numerous instances of sudden transformation. Like I'm sharing this not to brag or anything really, but just to tell you the power of the Dharma. It's not power of any individual, but like I've had so many experiences where at the end of the semester, some students would come to my office and they would close the door, or they'll be collapsing on the floor, crying and prostrating, and they're like, "Oh, my life is just completely changed." I'm like, how could I have been so blind in the past? And now all of a sudden I understand, and they were just, yeah, just filled with tears and expressing spontaneous joy. And and after that, they really become changed people. It's like all of a sudden they are infused with wisdom. They know how to practice. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a power of Dharma. In the end, it's not about your parroting some teachings you've learned. It's about your awakening this inner wisdom that we all have. Yeah. Well, I guess this is a good opportunity to remind people here that this is going to be our last office hours for the semester. I will resume the hosting of office hours starting January 20th something, right? I believe I already shared with you my new office hours, which are Mondays, Wednesdays. What is it? Is it 12:30 to 1:30 or thereabout? I have to double check. But in any case, if you want to find out, you can always drop me a line. Otherwise, I've made that announcement last week too. I'll be uh, heading to Taiwan pretty soon. So this is pretty much it as far as the semester is concerned. If I don't have a chance to see you again, my heartfelt blessing of happy holiday, safety, health for everyone. Yeah. And if there's not anything else, I could semi-retire. I could turn off the camera until someone awakens me again, with possible question or whatnot. I'll stay here. I'll stay here until 7:30 or 8. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
If
you.
there's not anything else. Hey, thank you guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay. Bye bye.